Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a real head-scratcher, a series of maps that, well, they just shouldn't exist. They're charts from the age of discovery, but they seem to show things that were centuries ahead of their time. This is one of those mysteries that could genuinely make you question what you think you know about history. Okay, so let's set the scene. The year is 1929. A team of scholars is deep in the dusty archives of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, sifting through records from the old Ottoman Empire, and they stumble across this incredible fragment of a world map drawn on a piece of gazelle hide. It was made by a famous Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis, and it's dated 1513. That's just 21 years after Columbus first bumped into the Americas. And this is where things get, well, really weird. When modern map experts got their hands on it, they looked at the southern edge and found something that seemed completely impossible. It looked an awful lot like the northern coastline of Antarctica. Now, what's the problem with that? Antarctica wasn't officially discovered for another 300 years. This, right here, is the central puzzle of the Piri Reis map. Now look, if this was just one map, you could maybe chalk it up to a fluke, right? A wild guess. But here's the thing. The Piri Reis map wasn't alone. It was actually part of a pattern of these baffling charts from the same time period, all hinting at some source of knowledge that just shouldn't have been around yet. Let's bring in the other key pieces of evidence here. In 1515, you have the Schoner globe. It clearly shows a strait at the very bottom of South America, a full 5 years before Ferdinand Magellan even sailed through it. But then you get the Oronteus Finaeus map from 1531, and this one is a whole other level of strange. It doesn't just hint at a southern continent, it maps it out in incredible detail. And this right here, this comparison gets to the absolute heart of the mystery. The Finaeus map doesn't show Antarctica as we know it, this giant ice cube. It shows the actual land underneath all that ice. You can see riverbeds, bays, a clear coastline, and its overall shape is shockingly similar to what our modern technology like seismic surveys and satellites has shown us is hidden down there. So how on earth could a 16th century mapmaker know that? So you've got this pattern, right? All this impossible knowledge just popping up. It led one researcher to come up with a theory so radical, it would basically force us to rethink everything we know about ancient history. The idea is that these maps aren't from the 1500s at all. They're just echoes from something much, much older. And look, it's super important to understand that this theory didn't just come out of nowhere from some fringe character. It came from Charles Hapgood, a Harvard-trained professor, and it all started as a simple class project for him and his students. They just wanted to figure out where the information on these weird maps actually came from. So after years of just digging into this, converting the map's strange projections, comparing everything, Hapgood came to this absolutely mind-bending conclusion. He proposed that these 16th century maps weren't new at all. They were just copies of copies of copies, handed down for thousands of years from a lost, highly advanced seafaring civilization, a civilization that mapped the entire planet back when Antarctica was green and free of ice. So how do you even begin to support a claim that big? Well, the evidence Hapgood pulled together is pretty fascinating. It's not just about, hey, this shape kind of looks like that shape. It's about specific details that are just way out of place for their time. This timeline really just lays it all out, doesn't it? The Piri Reis map seems to show the Andes Mountains 7 years before any European had ever laid eyes on them. It shows the coast of a continent 300 years before it was officially discovered. The information is it's in the wrong time period. And this wasn't just some obscure academic theory that nobody paid attention to. Hapgood's work was so compelling that he got the attention of, well, Albert Einstein. I mean, Einstein was so fascinated that he actually agreed to write the foreword to Hapgood's book, saying the ideas could be of great importance. And here's a huge point in Hapgood's favor. Piri Reis himself says right on the map that he didn't discover this stuff. He wrote that he compiled his map from about 20 different source maps, including some really ancient ones, quote, from the time of Alexander the Great. I mean, could those be the ancient fragments Hapgood was talking about? Okay, but you know the saying, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. And as you can imagine, skeptics were ready to jump in and point out some major problems with this whole lost civilization idea, offering a much more down-to-earth explanation. The skeptical view is a lot simpler. That Antarctic coast, it's probably just the coast of South America, but bent way out of shape because Reis ran out of room on his piece of leather. That animal that's supposed to be a llama? Well, it has horns. Llamas don't have horns. And the Andes Mountains? They're in the wrong spot, with no Pacific Ocean anywhere in sight. Yeah, and speaking of errors, let's talk about this number 900. That's how many miles of the South American coastline are just gone, vanished from the map. That's a huge, huge mistake for a map that's supposed to come from some super advanced ancient source. And the problems just keep piling up. The whole Caribbean is a total mess. Cuba is drawn as part of the mainland, which is exactly the mistake Columbus made. The island of Hispaniola is shaped like the mythical island of Japan from other medieval maps. These don't look like precise scientific measurements. They look like a jumble of early European myths and mistakes. So this is the real tug of war, isn't it? Do all these obvious mistakes completely sink Hapgood's theory, or are they actually what you'd expect to find? You know, if a perfect ancient map got copied and misinterpreted over and over again for thousands of years, wouldn't it end up looking kind of garbled and messy, just like this? All right, so we've seen both sides, the absolutely stunning accuracies on one hand and the just glaring errors on the other. Where does that leave us? Are we looking at a message from a lost world, or just a really interesting mistake from our own history? At the end of the day, it really comes down to this. For all the talk of a lost civilization of ancient sea kings, we have never found a single tool, a single ruin, not one physical artifact. And without that kind of proof, Hapgood's incredible idea has to stay in the box labeled fascinating theory. But, and this is a big but, the simple explanations don't quite get us there either. Okay, maybe you can explain away the Piri-Reis map as a distorted South America, but what about the Oronteus Finaeus map? That one is way more detailed, way more accurate in showing an ice-free Antarctica, and it's much, much harder to just dismiss as a lucky guess. You know, the idea that a bunch of ancient maps could just disappear, that's not science fiction, that's just history. Think about the Great Library of Alexandria. We know for a fact that countless texts, maps, and entire histories were lost forever when it was destroyed. Who's to say what knowledge vanished with them? And so we're kind of back where we started, staring at this incredible puzzle. These phantom maps are real. The information they contain is in some ways impossible to explain with conventional history. So if it didn't come from a lost civilization, where did it come from? That is the mystery that still keeps people up at night.